Hey everybody, it's time to swing with Still Swinging. And I'm your host, Thomas. And today, family, we got Candace Owens up. Candace Owens did an interview with Harvey Weinstein. And in this interview, Harvey Weinstein, he proclaims his innocence. All right, I followed the case of Harvey Weinstein, and I found a lot of problems in it myself. Like mainly I seen a lot of immoral stuff, not much that you could consider illegal. But it was illegal if they could get you in your feelings to the point where you consider immoral illegal, then yeah, it'll work for you. But anyway, this was the first time I ever heard this brother speak. All right. Now I know Harvey Weinstein is not an African American gentleman. But listen, I'm a men's advocate. I advocate for men. And if he been falsely accused and convicted, I think he needs to be heard. Okay, listen. So what we get ready to do right now, fellas, is we going to listen to Harvey Weinstein with our logic and our sound reasoning and not our feelings. Okay? And remember, it's a big difference between immoral and illegal. That guy's in jail, in prison.
I just want to say something very clearly. I believe women should be heard, but I'm wrongfully convicted. You know what I mean? And right now, I'm not convicted. I'm on a retrial. An appeal overturned my conviction. But justice demands a clear, honest look at each case. And I am here for fairness and the truth. You know what I mean? I made mistakes. There's no question about it. I hurt my family. I hurt my friends. I cheated on my wife, and that was a mistake, a terrible mistake. And I apologize to friends, family, all the innocent people who inadvertently I hurt, and especially to the Messick family, Jill Messick and her family. But I did not commit these crimes. I swear that before God and the people watching now and on my family. I'm wrongfully accused. But justice has to know the difference between what is immoral and what is illegal. People would say my complainants, you know what I mean? Okay, I'm getting emotional. Everyone deserves a fair trial. Media doesn't favor me, but thanks to you, Candace, there's a voice out there, and Joe Rogan, and uses every opportunity, the mainstream media, to discredit me. But I speak for innocent people. Justice has to matter. Evidence has to matter. I've lost everything. You know what I mean? I've lost everything a man can lose, but still the truth matters. I've been condemned of crimes I did not commit. I understand why people want someone to blame, but I am telling the truth. End of statement. End of glasses. And they allowed me to wear a suit today, as opposed to the last time I was in my t-shirt and pajamas. So they wanted me to wear a suit, so here it is.
Well, you look like you're hanging in there. And I got to tell you, since you've been in there, the media world has changed. Definitely, I think a world that you had a lot of power in. You can see the landscape has changed. And it's a good thing because podcasters like me can have a platform to take a look at situations like yours. And, my audience is very aware of my opinion on this case. I've been very clear about that. I don't find a reason to lie. I said you were wrongfully convicted before it got overturned. And I believe you are wrongfully accused, not just in the New York case, but also in the LA case.
Harvey Weinstein's case in New York was overturned. His conviction was overturned. Now, fellas, don't get that confused. That doesn't mean he's getting out. That doesn't mean they found him not guilty. No, what that means is they found enough problems with that case to order him a new trial. So essentially, he just been ordered to be retried. So he gonna have to fight the case all over again. He going back to trial. That's all a conviction being overturned mean. He just won the right to have a new trial.
Which my audience is now up to date on. Harvey, I obviously, because I very much agree with you, I think you are immoral. and what you did was wrong, but you did not do anything that came close to what you were accused of under the law. I just want to ask you, what is it like to go from someone who commanded so much power amongst politicians and amongst celebrities and athletes?
Fair use, family. Fair use.
And overnight, virtually none of those people stood up for you or said, hey, I don't believe that this is right.
It's shocking, the friends that stayed with me were my friends that I grew up with, the people that I knew before I was famous, before I had power, the people in my life who were steadfast all through my life were the ones who remained loyal. Everybody was scared. This looked like, a witch hunt. Everybody was scared for themselves. Everybody was scared to be canceled. Somehow, I wish this would have happened to somebody else, because I had the courage to have fought on somebody else's behalf, but nobody.
Family, that's a funny thing. Okay, because when you in that situation, yeah, you want somebody to fight for you, and you think you would just get up and fight for somebody else, but that's not the case, because fighting for Harvey wasn't going to help Harvey, and it would get you canceled. So essentially, if even though they close friends of him and he done a lot of things for them, bro, they can't jeopardize and put in jeopardy the things that they got going on. Okay, they got lives to protect. Okay, they got homes, they got vehicles, they got children, they got tuition, they got bills, all right, that they need to pay for with their star power. And if they come out and speak up for him when he been turned into a monster, the media deemed him the monster of the industry. Okay, you align with him, you're not going to get him out of where he in, and you just going to turn everybody against you. So if he would have been somebody else and it was somebody else in his situation, he would have did the same thing that they done, just stayed out of it, because it wasn't going to help Harvey and it was going to hurt them personally.
Nobody fought on mine.
Do you know, Harvey, I have a long list of people who came out against you, but a very short list of who actually spoke out for you. One person in particular, which is quite stunning, a guy by the name of Luciano Garignani, an Italian director. He wore a homemade T-shirt in support of you in 2018 that said that you were not guilty. That was the only person that I could find that vocally supported you when all of the heat was coming down on you in 2018.
He's a terrific director, and I'm very much appreciate it. But the people who support me are scared to talk. They are frightened to death. They are frightened that they're going to be canceled, that they're not going to be able to work. I try to get, my, people to stand up and even testify in the trial, and nothing. Nothing.
And jumping into that, by the way, some of the names, there were people who I think remained silent for that reason that you're saying, is they were fearful of being canceled. But some people took it upon themselves to come out and actually condemn you and to say awful things about you. And people, the media was obsessed with speaking about Gwyneth Paltrow. I don't know if you know this. She went on Howard Stern and basically made a very strong statement against you and said that Brad Pitt had to effectively rescue her from you and stand up to you because you made her feel so uncomfortable.
We had one instance in a hotel room where he made a pass at me. And then I really kind of stood up to him. I told my boyfriend at the time,
Brad Pitt.
We were at the opening of Hamlet on Broadway that Ray Fiennes was in Hamlet, and Harvey was there, and Brad Pitt. It was like the equivalent of throwing him against the wall, energetically. What he did was he leveraged his fame and power to protect me at a time when I didn't have fame or power yet.
Right. Wow. It moves you.
Yeah. It was fantastic. He said, if you ever make her feel uncomfortable again, I'll do something like that.
It's a complete fabrication, about my relationship with Gwyneth. I'm going to talk about it and just say that I had a meeting with her. She originally was scheduled to do Woody Allen's Everyone Says I Love You. Thank God I was distributing that movie as well. And I managed to substitute Drew Barrymore for Gwyneth so that Gwyneth could play Emma. And Woody Allen did us a real favor by doing that because we were scheduled to shoot Emma and I wanted Gwyneth for the role. At the end of the meeting, we had a glass of champagne. As I was walking out the door, I said to her, "I'd love you to give me a massage." And she went, "Yeah." And, that was it. I didn't put my hand on her. I didn't touch her. I definitely made a pass, I guess. You could call it that. But that was the sum total of that situation. She did have Brad call me, and Brad, very manly, very cool, just said, "Don't do that again." And that was that. We made 11 movies together, classic films, Shakespeare in Love, Talented Mr. Ripley, Sliding Doors, just so many great movies and such a great partnership. And now I heard, that she thought the relationship was abusive. Anybody who was there who witnessed that relationship, it just turned into total friends. There's pictures of her hugging me when I was sick. When I was sick in the hospital and didn't think I was going to make it in 1999, Gwyneth at the Golden Globe said, "Bomber, we miss you." She got up and made a speech about me. Nobody asked her to do that. In her Academy speech, she thanks me. She's the daughter of a wealthy TV producer, a great man, and Blythe Danner, a great actress, with Steven Spielberg as her godfather. She doesn't have to she could have just said, "Harvey asked me for a massage. I'm never working for him again."
Fellas, and that's my big problem with this stuff. You see how she turned herself into some kind of victim when all he did was made a pass at her, talking about she stood up to him. She ain't stand up to him. All she did was turn him down. Okay, if somebody she was attracted to made a pass at her, did you think she would have felt like some kind of victim and had to stand up for herself? Or do she think she would have just accepted or turned it down and it would have been no big thing? Why did that have to turn into somebody had to turn into a superhero who wasn't even there in the hotel room? You declined his request and you left. Okay, listen, and now for some odd reason, she had to turn it. And fellas, when I followed the trial, it was a whole lot of this, a whole lot of if they could get you in your feelings. And she went on TV on Howard Stern in front of everybody with what he was going through and made that seem like, and if he already looked like a monster and she telling you this big bad man was scaring her and pressing down on her, and all he said was, "Hey, it would be nice if you could give me a massage. I would like that." And she said, "No way," and left. Fellas, was it immoral? He married. Yes. Was it illegal? No way. But if they could get you in your feelings, you won't know the difference.
The actress, you tell me exactly what happened. And it's interesting because what you're speaking about was what I always found to be problematic about the Me Too movement from the beginning is we're conflating, he made a pass at me and I didn't like it, right? Or, I turned him down, or maybe I had a bad date with someone with rape. And this is very, and sure, she can say that. I didn't like that he made a pass at me, but to jump on a train when people are saying I've been raped, irresponsible for women to do that. I really do think it's irresponsible for people to be conflating being hit on and not liking it, which you've admitted to, and I've been raped.
No question about it. It's all conflated, and it's all led to the idea that I am going to be the one they prosecute. I am going to be the one they persecute. Look, when the case was overturned, they could have dropped it, but they didn't. They just went after me one more time and added somebody to it. But, I can't talk about the case.
Yeah.
I can just, talk to you about the things that you need to talk to me about.
Right. I totally understand that. I'm not going to push you on that because
But
that's
one
probably
thing,
what
one thing I do want to say is I've asked to have lie detector tests brought into the prison. And I already took a lie detector test on Jessica Mann, and I scored in the highest level, that one can do for honesty about not sexually assaulting her or raping her, and I want to do lie detector tests on the others. I know they're not admissible, but I want the world to know that I did that. And I hope the women would just take me up on the challenge and say, okay, we'll do it too. But I doubt they will, but I will.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the things that stunned me is that they didn't report a lot of this stuff in the press. And when I looked at this case and I said, if you're a journalist and you're just interested in anything, why would you leave out these big details? He passed a lie detector test. It also stunned me, particularly involving the LA case, which I fully expect to similarly be overturned. It definitely looked like the Me Too movement got so big that they needed to say, sort of hang somebody. Somebody's got to die so that we can move on and think that we've achieved social justice. And I think that somebody was definitely you.
100%. They wanted me, and they wanted me in jail forever.
Yeah, and it's quite stunning because I think now, and maybe you recognize this, the Me Too movement is on its way out, if it's not officially gone now, and people are willing to sort of look and examine the facts of this case. And I'm wondering if a lot of these celebrities, I'll just give you an example here. Seth Rogen came out when things were happening with you, and he said, I believe all women coming forward about Harvey Weinstein's sexual harassment. It took bravery to do so. Such a blanket statement to just say, I believe all women. That was kind of what was being said in 2017 and 2018. Like, women have never told a lie.
I can, Seth, and I made a movie together called Zach and Miri Make a Porno. It was a Kevin Smith film, and it didn't do well. And I think, sometimes you blame the producer or the distributor. And in this case, they blame me. And it was a good movie, and I wish I could have marketed it better, but I couldn't find the handle on it. And so I think there was always animosity between Seth and myself. So given the opportunity, he took a shot at me. And
that's this business. That's what it is, family. That's what a lot of it's rooted in. You gotta remember, he got the power to make their dreams come true. That's why when Cat Williams said, when he came into Harvey Weinstein's office and right there in front of all of his peoples, Harvey Weinstein asked him, could he perform an act on him? And it wasn't hard for me to believe that. Listen, how do they get emboldened like that? Because most of them people just do it. And think about it. If it's a man that walk in his office and he asks, can he perform an act on him in front of all of his people? He got that brazen because most people just do it. Okay, it's not a lot of opportunities in that business. Okay, and when one of them got one, all right, what you going to do? You going to take the opportunity or you going to turn it down? Most of them ain't going to turn it down. And if he can get men to do that, how hard you think it is that a woman to come in here and decide she going to do it? Remember, they want something. That's why they doing it. They not doing it for no other reason. They not doing it because they scared. They doing it because they think they can gain something by doing it. All right. Now, this one, it'll turn into a problem when they don't get what they want or when they can't keep getting what they want and they can't use it to keep getting what they want. That's when it usually turns into a problem. And listen, sometimes when the project didn't succeed, okay, who you going to blame? The one who put the project in motion, him. He got the keys. You can blame him. You know him personally. He was the reason. Okay, listen, sometimes you might think people just go away and forget. No, 15 years later, they still scolded. All right, maybe their life, especially when they not doing anything. you're going to probably be the reason why they not doing anything. And if you think they got a problem with making up a story about you when they don't have nothing to lose and everything to gain, you would be sadly mistaken. It's like that lady who said he made a pass at her and turned into a victim. Why you think she did that? Okay, now she a lot older. All right, the opportunity's not coming as much. You know what saying this going to do? It's going to make people who normally wouldn't want to talk to her want to talk to her now. All right, it's called chasing clout, as a lot of the young people know it today. All right, but it's still a lie and it's still not right. All right, and you still ain't told me nothing illegal he done.
On this, I read about, that he's doing amazing work on this TV series he has called The Studio, and he's an extremely talented individual. But, I was a sitting duck.
Yeah, and look, a lot of these people, I think it was step on his head while he's drowning and it will help you. And I'm sure their PR agents were saying, you don't want to get caught up in this, make the right statement or you're going to get burned by this. But like I said, some people took it, I think, a bit further. You and I had discussed, and I don't know if we're willing to talk about this, but, Brad Pitt kind of got involved in a Me Too project after this, kind of got involved in a Me Too movie, so to speak, helping to produce one. And you and him had a very close relationship.
Well, I wouldn't say it was close, but it certainly was friendly. And I guess his company produced She Said, the New York Times writers, and they produced the movie. And I can, I just, when it came out, obviously I was concerned, but it bombed so badly. There was no interest in it. It grossed $2.5 million. It was a $30 million movie, something like that, or maybe that between advertising and the cost of the film. And the movie grossed $2.5 million its opening weekend, which is disaster. I think it went on to gross $4 or $5 million. So maybe it showed there's no interest in me, but there certainly was no interest in the case. And the New York Times, those writers, I have read something that is so explosive and such a bombshell that a young writer named Clark Patterson, conservative, with the guts to write an article about what happened to me at the New York Times, a detailed point-by-point article showing that there was no reporting, that they were taking dictation. When they said She Said, they meant it. She said, we wrote it down, we never checked it. Rose McGowan said, I donated money to an organization. They never checked, that she did that. They never checked, these different things and followed up and did the research before they wrote the article. Ashley Judd's claims are, ridiculous. I stood in a hotel room. I never touched her, came on to her, nothing ever. I fought for her. They said I banned her on a movie. I fought for her on Good Will Hunting, and I lost that battle. I thought she would have been fabulous in that movie, and I think she would have gotten an Oscar nomination. But
no, my brother, people don't forget they blamed you. They blamed you. All right, listen, just even with me, bro, everybody who don't got it think I should do it. And if I don't do it, then they got a problem with me. No, they not going to get over it. No, they think you should have done it. 10 years late, they still think you should have done it. All right? Listen, they don't care nothing about your reason. And listen, she don't care how hard he fought for her. If he ain't get it done, it was his fault. All right, listen, let me explain something to you. When everything not working out, they're going to look for whatever might work out. And if saying you done something to them might make something work out in their life, they're going to say you done something. All right, because they got everything to gain and nothing to lose.
People could forget All it is research. There's an article in the Washington Post, if you Google Ashley Judd and Harvey Weinstein, and said that Ashley Judd gushed all over me at the English Patient Oscar party. There's a picture of me holding her hand. And when she went on TV, she said, "See, he's pulling me. He's pulling me." I was just holding her hand, pushing her into the party, bringing her in. But Diane Sawyer and those people at that time, you believed it because everybody believed those people, at that moment. The New York Times believed no research whatsoever. I hope this article blows the whole place up, and that the Pulitzer Prize people reconsider.
Ready to join?
Harvey, I think it's perhaps more sinister than you even think, because we're similarly following a case with Blake Lively, and it is a case of she said. The New York Times, I think, even worse than that, they wanted to go after this guy. They had friends at the New York Times, the exact same woman who won a Pulitzer, one of the 3 people who won a Pulitzer for Taking You Down, Megan Twohey, was the one who wrote this piece about Justin Baldoni. And when we got the full details, gratefully, Brian Friedman, and this would have been my legal strategy had I have been your lawyer, just dropped every possible detail for the public to be able to read. It is, I think personally, there should be laws. A journalist should have to go to prison. I mean,
family, the story not salacious, exciting, extraordinary if he really innocent. No, they got to push the monster narrative. That's going to get the headlines. All right. They don't want to hear nothing about his innocence. All right. And once them wheels start turning with the justice system and the media, it's over. It's over. I don't know who he ticked off, but I'm quite sure he does. All right. Just like the rest of them, just like Bill Cosby. Okay. Just like P. Diddy. All right. Just like R. Kelly. Listen. And the list goes on. And don't think he the only Caucasian gentleman who been taken down by this Me Too movement. See, he just famous and in the limelight. All right, they tried with T.I. Listen, you gotta understand that even if he prove his innocence, he ain't gonna never get his life back. I seen a lot of this stuff, guys. I seen a lot of this stuff, and a lot of it just a bunch of ladies screaming. And I know they just disgruntled and ain't doing nothing right now. And they don't have nothing to gain. Nothing to lose and everything to gain from these allegations. All right. So what's so hard about just talking and saying it? This Me Too movement with Believe All Women, bro, it wreaked havoc on some of these men's lives. All right, because they don't have that same energy when it's the other way around the board. Okay, that's why I don't give a lot of credence to that Shannon Sharp. And that's what happened when you go dealing with them Caucasian young white ladies and these young ladies. No, nobody had that smoke for Meg Thee Stallion with Tory Lanez. Ain't nobody saying nothing about that. See, it don't got nothing to do. It don't have as much to do with what you wanted to have to do with it until that's who you wanted to have it to do with it for. All right. Until this guy right here is the guy you needed to apply to, that's when you apply it. Okay. So no, I don't give it the same kind of consideration. All right. Listen, facts is facts. And so far, they ain't proved to me that he committed a crime. All right, they just proved to me that, this guy's immoral.
There should be laws. A journalist should have to go to prison. If you're putting people in prison on the basis of what you write, it just would follow to me that somebody would have to suffer the consequence of lying. These are lies by omission and painting people as, sexual harassers or worse than that, rapists, because you're maybe doing a solid for your friend, which is what it's looking like the New York Times was doing for Blake Lively and Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps bigger people behind them. Have you considered the angle, Harvey, that these are big bosses, WME bosses, are the people who want to buy a piece of your company? Have you made somebody angry? I think that there might have been something more behind the takedown of you, because I can't comprehend it. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I don't know. I think, with the New York Times, I think the relationship was always rocky because I wanted, the New York Times to cover the things that I wanted, and I wanted the New York Times not to cover some of the things too. So it was a back and forth relationship. And I, on one level, I had a great relationship, with the owner, but the owner of the paper, has a firewall between him and the editorial. There were editorial back and forth. I guess they didn't like me and they wanted me, and I was a good target for them.
How do you think she then won a Pulitzer? That's what's stunning to me. It kind of makes the entire system fraudulent, because to win a Pulitzer, it has to be such detailed. You looked at every angle. You've explored every case. I mean, I barely looked at this case before I realized something was very wrong. And I thought you were guilty. By the way, when you and I first got on the phone,
Yep.
I just said, I don't even remember what he was in prison for, but there were so many articles that surely somebody did the due diligence.
That's how I go, family. Because if I would have just listened to everything I heard about this guy, I would have just thought, yeah, he did these things. He did this and that. Family, it's just a bunch of ladies who, you know what I'm saying? He worked with, who was older and wasn't doing much. And now, okay, that's what you got to understand about these situations, fellas. These ladies start these stories. How long you think they've been telling these stories about him? How long you think they've been telling those stories about Bill Cosby? How long you think they was telling those stories about Diddy? You can't possibly think they had just started. They had been telling those stories for decades. How did they all of a sudden get listened to? Family, every rich and powerful man got scorned women in his wake. All right? You can't keep them all. All right? Most of them got scorned women in their wake. Simple as that. You can't keep them all. All right? Look at me. I got scorned women in my wake. And if I got famous today, they'd be saying I done something. Because they got everything to gain and nothing to lose. And most of them, they ain't doing nothing. They ain't doing nothing, and that's how it is. They sit around trying to scheme up a way to come up on themselves something real quick. And it don't matter who they got to mess over to get this done. All right, listen. Whoever he ticked off, I believe he know. And it ain't in his interest to talk about it. All right, especially if he want to get them people off of him and get them to leave him alone. He know better than to get to talking about who it was. He trying to repair it. All right, but the thing is, fellas, once they start piling these ladies up, okay, they setting a trail. Then the minute you rub somebody, the wrong person, the wrong way, they'll start letting these ladies get hurt. And then that's when I know they coming for you.
Guilty or confirmed that. And it was, an hour reading into these transcripts. And I went, what's going on here?
Well, this young man, Clark Patterson, has a detailed article coming out, which will detail piece by piece, every name, every story, everything that they did and everything they didn't do as reporters. And it is a stunning piece. And I hear it's going to be published soon. I don't know where, but I just heard through the grapevine. But, and I read a preliminary article, and, I'm excited, to have that out. I hope the New York Times restates its case so I can sue them for defamation.
Absolutely. And a question for you, Harvey, somebody who's on the red carpet all the time, flying to premieres, flying private, commanding so much respect in the industry. What is a day in your life like now?